Hello and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'll be reviewing my custom LEGO Transformers Optimus Prime. Now I'm going to be starting this video in robot mode, which is something I don't usually do, but I think it's just time to change things up a little. So you can see here, his proportions are slightly strange, however he actually can pull off pretty good poses, especially considering I've gave him all these weapons. Because I did decide to make two energon swords, the axe, and a gun, which you can see in the poses here, which he actually pulls off pretty well, even if the arms are slightly shorter than they probably should be. But given the fact they do have to fit into the side of the truck mode, I think these are actually alright, because at least in posing, they don't look too bad. However, standing straight up, I can tell they are slightly too short. But obviously, the posing here is quite good, as he does have ankle pivots, as well as all the other necessary articulation, except a waist joint, as due to the way he transforms, it does get locked up just to keep him secure, and keep the back panels tabbed in. And you can see here he is actually quite tall, as his legs are pretty long. And I actually could have made his legs slightly shorter by using ball joints at the knees, however, this definitely would have made them a lot looser, which is obviously not what I wanted, as he wouldn't be able to pull off as good of poses if he kept falling over. But he is definitely around leader height, at least nowadays. And he does have all the wheels on his legs, as this is more of a stylized version of Prime, rather than any specific version. And is more of my own take on the character before I want to do a more accurate version to at least one of the designs, which will probably be the Prime design, as I've not attempted that yet, and I haven't done many Prime characters. But here he is with a minifigure, which you can see I actually think doesn't scale too badly, and with a Speed Champions car as well. And like I said before, the proportions on this guy are slightly strange, however, in poses, he does work quite well. And here you can see how the back cleans up, as it does have the front of the truck, which is slightly strange for an Optimus Prime. And he does have the Siege-style arms. But I think it's time to get to the transformation. So the first thing we can do is we can just bend him at the torso. Now you don't actually need to bend the knees for this. However, that's just to keep him standing. So now the legs are like this, we can take the ball joints on the feet and rotate them to the inside. And we can also take that blue panel, and that's just going to tab onto the other foot, and this is what will keep him secure. And we can also rotate up the tail light pieces just like that, which I actually think this forms a more coherent back section than most other recent Optimuses. And we can also rotate around these panels just like the Siege. And to get rid of these back pieces, we just fold them down on these hinge pieces, and we can compress them, which should bring the grill together, just like that. And like most Primes, we can rotate down his head. Now, you could rotate the head around, as it will be slightly visible like this, but I honestly don't care, so we'll just keep going. And we can also bring the arms up, just to give us clearance for the next step. Which, speaking of that next step, is actually to rotate the torso around, so it is just on a pin joint, and it should just spin around like this. And now, using the hinge that is in the torso, as well as the ball joints in the arms and elbows, we can just compress the arms to the side. And we can also rotate these side pieces, which, almost there, we can now fold up the top pieces, so they are just on a stud connection. And there he is in truck mode. So, like I said, this is a more stylized take on his character, which is why I went for the sun visor like Rise of the Beasts, as I do just think it does look better than without it. And I think the truck proportions do work quite well here. And I even think the taillight section cleans up a lot better than most recent Optimus Primes. Even if you can see the head slightly, but that doesn't bother me, as I'm not really paying attention to him from the back. And even the gas tanks do have quite a cool building technique. But for some comparisons, here he is with Siege Optimus Prime. And you can see he actually compresses quite well into this mode, and he's not too much bigger than the Voyager offering. And here he is with Jeep Bumblebee. And you can definitely see some of the stylization in this truck mode, featuring the white line that goes all the way around the sides. as well as the sun visor, a smaller grille, and some different headlights than usual, as well as a slightly larger bumper, and overall the truck is slightly stylized. But I actually think it works quite well, especially with minifigure scale, even if it is slightly too small for that. But overall the truck mode does clean up quite nicely, and it's definitely more solid than some of my previous attempts in Optimus Prime. So for some final thoughts on this figure, I definitely think he is quite nice, and here with the axe you can see he does pose quite well. I also think the 3 wheels on the legs are actually quite a cool design technique, rather than having the front wheels just disappear like most U1 Optimus Primes. I also think the back does clean up pretty well, even if it does have some slight truck kibble on the back that it does stick out slightly, but apart from that, it works quite well. And since he has good articulation, he actually can dual wield the axe, or at least have it in both hands, which does look pretty nice in posing. So yeah, I think that's just about it for this review. And if you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate if you give a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, as it does help out greatly. But anyways, I'll see everybody for next week's video, and have a great week.